wake up to get paid and make plays. Now I wake up on a mission that was heavily ordained. Matthew 5:48 obtain perfection is the aim. On the road to the kingdom that the most high paid.
That should Feinberg, right?
And obtain new faith.
That should have been
Trust
it.
in my money, about to get what he made for. Shelter, raiment,
That might be if he can hear now.
good health gave me breath, good grace, I said it die. Sin straight condemned, not a chance to get it right. It's like more, it's like looking back, it's full of pride. Father, give me to this and reason I'm alive. On the ways of my past, compared to the word, I really was deceived. Cause a man would never try, if you don't think you gotta change. This message for the starved, the spirit, for the poor and me, for the lost and blind. Living water, available for all, come drink.
All right, let's get it, y'all. Let's go and get started. This for the record, I know a lot of people like to say happy this, happy that. Myself, I'm not really one to be all adding the happy onto the Most High's feast days. That's a pagan tradition. Same thing as saying Merry, like Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas. I don't read in the Bible no Happy Day of Atonement. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not scolding anyone. You can do what you want to do, but it's something that I don't do. So it's the Feast of Purim. You know what I'm saying? We're going to have a good time, you know, so these 2 days. But I'm Elder Ma'ad. This is Brother Iran to my left from Waking High of the Church here tonight on the first day of the Feast of Purim. For the first portion of the feast day, I'm going to summarize it. Then we'll start in chapter 3 and read through verse, I think, 9. 10. We get that little bit in 10 too. So for all those that's in Christ, I pray you all are in harmony. If y'all don't celebrate it on this day, I just pray that y'all do it. Okay, whatever day that y'all do. Like we are to rehearse the righteous acts. All of us we're not one, but you know, rehearse means practice. So if some group do it next month, 2 months from now, hey, so be it. Let them do it 2 months from now, as long as they honor it. One day, if we all make it, we'll be all together in harmony with the Most High and the Messiah. So, but right now, so we're not here to judge when people celebrate this, celebrate that. Just do it, okay? So the first couple of chapters of Esther, you know, we read how the king had prepared his feast, and he required he called for his wife, Queen Vesti, and she had a haughty spirit. She rebelled against her king, and lost her queenship and got fired by her husband, and replaced. And then we see that the king men went out and searched for all these beautiful so-called damsels to replace the queen, and the Most High put his spirit on the king to him to select and find favor with Queen Esther, who was the cousin of Mordecai. Now a lot of people think that, like, you know, we give a lot of highlight to Queen Esther, but when you read the book, it's really highlighting Mordecai. You know, he was the man that the Most High used to guide her, and he used her beauty and virtue to win over the king. But you know, it was Mordecai that, when you read the story, that Most High really glorified and honored. We see that Mordecai, this happened to one day be in the right place at the right time when the king's chamberlain, or the gate watchers or keepers was angry with the king for some reason and desired to kill him. Mordecai heard the convo, told his cousin Esther. She told the king, and it kind of slipped the king's mind because afterwards he had exalted in a Gagite or Edomite, to a high position next to him named Haman. And the Bible calls Haman Israel's enemy, right? So he desired to eradicate our people off the face of the earth, and he convinced the king by persuasion to set a decree to destroy our nation. And from that part there, we're gonna get to read this chapter or book of Esther. Esther chapter 3, verse 1.
Con, when everyone's there. Esther chapter 3, verse 1. After these things,
Let's alternate.
okay.
Okay.
Verse 1 reads, After these things the king Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence.
Good gracious.
Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the first month, that is, the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is, the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is, the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad, and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom.
Now take heed to what Haman, this Edomite, is getting ready to say about our nation, about our people. Read.
And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people.
Our laws are diverse from all the other nations. Read.
Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them.
You see how it's supposed to be? The Most High separate us from these nations, gave us his laws, statutes, commandments, and judgments, so as not to do as the nations around about us, not to serve their gods, not to bow down to their kings. With that, if Israel would have kept the laws, no other nation would ever rule over us, because in the law, only of our brethren should they have selected a king, but not of a Gentile nation. But that's a product of us sinning. We lost our kingship, so now we're serving these nations. But still, even in captivity, for all those who think because we're in captivity that we can't keep his laws, but it's showing, even though they was under the rulership and authority of the King Ahasuerus, Haman pointed out to him that we are still a people that keep the laws of our God and will not subject themselves to the king. So when the government makes certain decrees that goes against our worship, we are not to obey the government. We are to obey our king, our God. Okay? If the government say that you can't worship your God, make that make sense. If a man tell you that you can't worship your God, then who is your God? That man. Okay? As Peter said, you judge for yourself whether we are to obey the Most High or man. When they demanded Peter and disciples to quit preaching in the name of the Messiah. See? Well, let's get it. I want to express my love to all those that are with us right now. As always, Ahayah bless y'all. Let's get it.
Verse 9. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries.
So we see that Satan is in this Agagite trying to destroy or prevent the promised seed from coming to earth, which is the Messiah. Satan is trying multiple times and throughout this history, Satan had tried to erase us off the face of the earth to prevent Christ from coming, to fulfill prophecy, the Messiah coming, and ultimately, in the end, that seed will destroy all kingdoms and rule on earth forever in righteousness. So it's another attempt that Satan, hey, somebody get the door? This is another attempt that Satan is trying or had attempted to destroy our people. Let's get it.
Verse 10. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and all there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written, and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey.
They said a decree to kill us all in one day. Okay? Let's get it.
Verse 14, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan, the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed.
So what we see here, this is I was gonna say this for when the lesson was over with, when the class was over with, but I say it now. But one important fact that we must always consider when it comes to remember our holy days is the majority of them has to do with our salvation. Okay, as the Bible says that all things are written for a warning and for example for us in the end, who live in the latter days, in the last days, to build our confidence in our faith that no matter how horrible or dreadful or bleak our situation may appear, we have hope in our God. Okay, imagine how they felt when the rumor spread that the king has stamped this decree to destroy us on this particular day. Imagine the panic, the fear. It's like right now we hear news that Friday they come to get us. So let's put our mind there. Let's not just read it, but let's put our mind there and understand what was going on in the minds of our people in our communities. Okay? Because one day soon, we'll be faced with a similar situation, according to the prophecy, a similar situation. Okay? The Bible said, all that will not receive the mark of the beast shall be killed. It won't be a secret thing, my people. You know? It will not be a secret thing. When Mordecai perceived that all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on, man, burnt my mouth with that hot coffee. Yeah, I know. Yeah, for real. Yeah. No, normally we sing and stuff and I let it cool off. I forget what I'm thinking about. Nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna let it cool off. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I know. Rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry. and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews. See? A great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she went and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatach, one of the king's chamberlains, who he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. Hatach went forth to Mordecai into the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasurers for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan, to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go into the king, to make supplications unto him, and to make requests before him for her people. But Hatach came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again, Esther spake unto Hatach, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's province do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into his inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king should hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then should their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house should be destroyed. And who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in and unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way, and did according to all that Esther had commanded him.
Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel, and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near, and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? It shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther, and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. And when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh, his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him. And now he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
Go ahead, keep reading.
On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king.
So what do we see here? This is the little bit that we read. I'm gonna see if y'all caught it. Yes, sister.
I was going to, what I see is the boasting and bragging of what's his name?
Haman.
Haman to his family about this dinner and everything, and that he listening to his wife telling him to build these gallows to hang and kill this man because he said something about him. He can't stand to keep seeing his face at this gate every time he come out, because for one, he's not bowing to him and doing them as he would do a king. I guess he want to be worshipped as well.
Okay. Anyone else?
I don't know if it's more about what I see, but I want to ask you, Haman is doing something, it seems like to me from the story he's trying to take over. But one day, that they take over the kingship. And it seemed like he's listening to his wife and his peers to one day, we got to get rid of Mordecai. And I'm wondering why, not just, I think it's more to Mordecai than just he being a Jew. But I think it's something else about him that Haman knows that can stop him from being the king.
Okay. Yes, Sister Shiva.
The proud speech against God's people, like Esau, like forever, like Satan, destroying God's people.
Okay. All those are true answers, but if we was in like secular school, those would be perfect answers. But earlier I stated that it was Satan trying to destroy our people to prevent prophecy. Okay, so what I see is spiritual warfare. Okay, it's Satan who is directing Haman, his wife, his family, encouraging them to entice the king and to get rid of God's people. It's the Most High who put it in, his spirit in Esther and in the king. Remember, it's against the law for her to do what she did. She risked her life for her people. As we read about Egypt, how the Most High softened Pharaoh's heart. And for a minute, he was cool, right? So you see the king's heart was softened to accept his wife. Because, understand, many kings killed a lot of people based on what we call peer pressure. You know what I mean? Because if somebody did something wrong, now you got his advisors coming and saying like they said about his wife. Mm-hmm. If she's allowed to get away with this, everybody's wife would be rebellious. So if she's allowed to do this, so the king would have to execute his law. but the Most High made them find favor, right? And so, but why? Because they didn't go looking for Esther to save them. They didn't look for Mordecai to save them. They all did what? They all came together, fasted, and prayed to their God. So all this direction that we see going on, it's the Most High who's guiding it. Even when Mordecai is speaking, it's not Mordecai speaking. Like when the Messiah tells us, he told Peter and them, when you go before these magistrates and kings, worry not what you are to speak. It should be given to you that hour. So what Esther's saying, what Mordecai is saying, is not of themselves. It's of the Most High's Holy Spirit. See, but he's guiding it. And because we need that guidance and that protection, because Satan is trying to incite to murder. You see? But let's get it.
Chapter 6, verse 1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles.
See that on that night, the Most High made him restless. You see? Now, what this restless night bring forth? Let's see.
On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king uses to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew.
Now, do y'all not see the Most High in that? Do y'all? That's all him. All his words. He had to exhort Mordecai. No one would have even listened to him. You know what I'm saying? If the Most High is not in that, Satan would have kept Mordecai away from his cousin. Trust and believe that. Okay? Satan would have convinced them to put guards before Esther, and Mordecai couldn't even get word to her. All that is the Most High's guidance. Made him restless. Go to the books. Exalt the lowly one. Okay? The one that he's about to use. Read.
Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew.
Now, can y'all imagine how Haman feeling right now? I watched a video not too long ago. I got what scene it was, but it said this person was humbled. Right? He was humbled right then. Shame, humbled. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, let's get it. Like somebody talking like a lot of trash, something happened, they get humbled. Yeah. But let's get it.
And do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate. But Haman hasted to his house mourning and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise man and Zeresh his wife unto him, If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman into the banquet that Esther had prepared. Chapter 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary, an enemy, is the wicked Haman. Is this wicked Haman? Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the palace place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified.
See, the Most High said that he will use their own devices against them. Read.
On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he had laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribe called at the time in the 3rd month, that is, the month Sivan, on the 23 day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies, and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against the day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment. And the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them.
And again, when it said they became Jews, they did not become a Hebrew. They converted into our so-called, what they call today, religion. All right, they cast away their values and their idols and their gods, and served the Most High. So I learned His laws from and kept them.
Verse 1, chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, that is, the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them.
Now, do you see the spirit of the Most High? There's many times in battle when we was outnumbered by hundreds of thousands, and Ahayah put his fear in the people. Even made like a little sound, and they all got scared and ran. But prior to him doing that, they was ready to destroy us. But it's showing that it's the Most High taking care of his people, protecting his people. He putting the fear in these people who was valiant at one time. Well, let's get it.
For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Paratha, and Adalia, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arasai.
Take heed to something, right? When we started talking about this testimony, I said, many people give all of the focus to Esther, but really it's Mordecai. So what we see here is that whenever we were in these type of situations, the Most High gave us a leader. You see that? He gave them a leader. Mordecai. Yes, sister. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm saying Esther was not, even though she's queen, Mordecai was second to the king. And he's teaching and he's leading these people. Because what I'm leading to is that, I'm just going to say it now. There will come a time, and none of us can say exactly how it's going to happen, where it's going to be, but like I said before, we're going to be in the same situation. The same demons that try to kill our forefathers will at the end try to kill us. And the Most High has always given us leaders, right? So many of us, like I said, will die glorious. So I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 6. Hold where you all are. I'm going to start at verse 10. Yep. It says, and they cried with a loud voice. This is prophecy. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, holy and true, Dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season unto their fellow servants also, and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. So there's a set number of people that must die. That's ordained to die gloriously. So that's what Christ says again. Be faithful unto death. If it's on us to die, it's a glorious thing for the Most High and for our laws and for our kingdom. But even in a situation where many of us will perish gloriously, and many of us will call it out and lose our soul, the Most High will raise up people. He will send his angels down like he always have done, and he put his spirit in men and will guide them. And with the angels, they will lead us to safety. Hold on. So that's why when people get it twisted when it says that within his borders we'll be protected. That don't mean that we go fleeing right now. When it says that there was fishermen and they fished them. There was hunters and they hunt them. Them are angels. Them are not men. It's the angels that's gathering us through the spirit and direction of the Most High. When we go back to the wilderness and all that stuff, that's angelic guidance from the Most High. It's not us just going to Africa on our own will. But we see how organized the Most High is. You know, he's a God of order. All this played out perfectly to the salvation of our forefathers. In the same way it will happen in the end. Because it says that a remnant did not get destroyed. A remnant did not receive the mark of the beast in their right hand or in their forehead. That remnant will what? Receive their garments. So they're not all this going, unorganized, it's on their own. No, this is the Most High guiding them into the land which he prepared, what he promised. What you about to say?
I was just gonna say, I was feeling like from the beginning with Mordecai at that gate in the sackcloth and ashes, he was leading and guided in from the words he
All-
gave to Esther. And then when she said, okay, well, everybody got to fast and pray, so we can.
That's what he was just telling us. That maybe this is why we're here. You know what I'm saying? For this day. For you to be exalted, you can get to the king and he raised. Mordecai never even desired to get raised up.
Right.
This is something that came with his obedience, his love and fear of his God. He wasn't seeking the king's favor. He was going against him. But let's get it. This is to show that, as I always say, the Most High true servants, they don't ask for that. So you have to be very careful with men trying to make themselves leaders or elders or teachers, because most of his teachers had no plans on being his servant. Okay? Like Mordecai had no plans of what happened to him. It's what Most High gave him, called him for. You see? But let's go. Let's get it.
Esther chapter 9, verse 10. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. On that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan, the palace, was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan, the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee? Or what is thy request further, and it shall be done? Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan, to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also on the month Adar. and slew 300 men at Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 75,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey.
Take heed also. These are the same people that was mourning and afraid. When the opposite side was eager to kill, our nation was mourning and afraid. Now they're afraid, and our people are eager to, fulfill the will of the Most High. But it's showing how the Most High can, turn on a switch. You go from being fearful to valiant. And that's what we find all through the scriptures. Our men, that's what I said, for anybody to say that they're not afraid to die, they're lying. Right? No one wants to die. But there's so many times that we've read up in the scriptures where we was faint of heart. The leader had to encourage them, give them a pep talk, to build them up. Most had to put a spirit in these people to lift them up and get them prepared to take care of business. Same thing here. These are the same people that was afraid for their lives. Now they're excited. They're fearless right now. Yeah. Yep. But let's go. They filled with the spirit. They about to take care of Most High business. Let's go.
Verse 17. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly.
So let's just understand that this is why it's not a Sabbath. 19 says, therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. Never said nothing about a Sabbath. It's a good day. It's a day of remembrance, right? And here's the difference, because I said all his Sabbaths are on the Sabbath, right? Now we can say, well, how about Day of Atonement, right? Well, atoning, when we fast, it's treated like a Sabbath. It says, thou shalt do not your own pleasure. Thou shalt do no servile work therein when you're fasting to the Most High. Okay? But he made it a Sabbath. Okay? The Most High did not make this day a Sabbath. These are 2 days of remembrance. Okay? Of the wonderful work of our God. Put his mighty hand down, delivering our people. Okay? For us to look forward to ultimately him delivering us from our enemies. Let's get it.
Verse 22. As the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy.
Rest from enemies mean war. Okay, let's get it.
And from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them. Because Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head.
Now let me ask you a question. On the Sabbath, can we send gifts abroad? It says, carry not out of your house any burden.
Yep.
You see? So it ain't for you to make a plate and go take it to your, to granny. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's showing that they're not operating as they will operate on the Sabbath. Okay, let's get it.
But when Esther had came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device which he devised against the Jews should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year.
So who are we remembering on this day? No, we not. The Most High. That's why it's a day of remembrance. These are two vessels he used, but who are we remembering? Our God. Esther and Mordecai didn't do nothing, but just follow the Spirit. But it's the Most High that we are remembering. Okay, let's get it.
28. And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family.
Every generation. That's why we keep it today.
Huh.
Remember, all scriptures are inspired by the Most High. Let's get it.
Throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed.
See that, nor the memorial of them perish from our seed, right? But it also showing that this is not supposed to be done in Jerusalem. They're not even in Jerusalem. But it said in all generations, in every province,
In
every city,
Con.
forever.
Con.
Read.
Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Ahayah, and Mordecai the Jew wrote with all authority to confirm the second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim and their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed.
So we're going to finish with this scripture. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11. Con, when everyone's there?
Con.
Yes, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11. Now all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonishing, upon whom the ends of the world are come. The Most High kept this testimony as the example and as a warning and as a promise that nothing, no God, no Lord, no man can take out of his hand what's his. Deliverance only comes through obedience. As we stated earlier, all of our holy days, and this is one of the main reasons why the Roman Catholic Church and their gods don't want our people to remember our holy days, because we're remembering the power and the might of our God, knowing that he promised to deliver our people from all our enemies and give us a kingdom where we will serve him without fear all the days of our life, even forever. Okay? So that's what Purim is all about at the end of the day. Our people was under duress and under the threat of being eradicated. In one day. But they all was obedient came together, they fasted and cried out loud to their Father, to their God, and he delivered them. As an example, what we must do. He promised to deliver us. So with that, God bless you. What? No. Tomorrow we're not going live tomorrow. So I said we'll come here. We're gonna feast. We're gonna play games and eat and drink. Have a good time. So with that, Ahayah bless you.